Well, hello.
Well, hello. How are you doing tonight?
I have run into an audio issue on my end
Oh, of course. We can
It's
hear you.
as everything was happening.
accent.
Yeah.
Just great.
I picked that up over the last week.
There it goes.
I don't know if that's a good thing. Like, is that foreshadowing something? Like, what do you?
I don't
what do you
know.
say? You can't beat him. Join him. Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're telling us, Luke?
I mean, beat who?
I mean, I'm just saying. Like, hey, we're not going to beat them. Might as well join them. Are you already like pre-gaming for that?
No, I didn't turn Catholic.
Oh, okay.
No.
I mean, it's good to know. It's good to know that you haven't just given up hope that Notre Dame is just going to win everything.
No hope. But we can talk about that some.
Yeah, we can definitely talk about it. Before we do that, though, let's do the intro.
Hey.
All right, now we're back.
Okay, now we can talk about it.
Yeah, so let's talk about the semifinal games. The incredibly boring until the last like 5 minutes. Penn State versus Notre Dame.
Yes.
When it actually turned into an actual game. I don't know. I don't know what y'all's thought was on that game, but that game just made me. It didn't. Everyone probably say, oh, well, the reason the offenses looked so anemic was because the defenses on both sides were just so good. And I don't think that was the case. It didn't really feel like that was the case. So
I think people were expecting more of like an explosive offense when both teams are not known for their explosiveness. Like they're known for their running game. They're known for like, hey, just kind of chip away on the side and not like how State would be. Like, hey, here's a big dynamic play to score. And so I kind of roughly expected the game kind of to run a little boring in that sense. But the fourth quarter literally was the entire game. Like, in every which way.
Dennis, I believe you picked the score correctly. If my memory serves me well, I'm pretty sure Dennis's pick was one of his like, oh, I think it's going to be around. Actually ended up being right. But no, I'm with you. I think both of these teams are kind of that. Let's use our defense. Let's wear down the offense. Let's wait for some mistakes. Let's try not to make mistakes on offense. And unfortunately, Drew Aller had like one of his worst games ever with, the pick and just the horrible timing. Riley Leonard didn't look that much better, to be honest. I think he had 2 picks, didn't he?
Yeah.
Didn't he throw 2 picks?
I mean, Aller should have had, 3.
Right. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But he got very lucky, so his game could have been so much worse.
Right. Yeah. And it just happened to be timing wise on that pick that it just like, and you feel bad for him. There's a lot of times when you hear these quarterbacks and you see, he throws that and it's picked off and everybody's just like, what are you doing? Like Aller has always been really good in protecting the football. And it's this time, and in his post game presser, he said that he was trying to dirt it and just, I guess, sailed on him. I don't know how you sail it when you're throwing it at the ground, but it's one of those where I'm like, I just don't know that. I think he was trying to make a hero play, and it didn't work out. But that's just my take. I'm not calling him a liar, but. It just was a weird, how do you mess up dirting a ball?
Yeah. Well, exactly. I mean, the thing is too, is like, you are basically one step removed from a true professional football player. I mean, you are still technically a professional. If the mark of being a professional is you get paid to play, or paid to do something, you are a professional. So you should theoretically be like, you know what? There's no like, oops, it just slipped out of my hand.
Right.
Like, no, that excuse works for me. Because because like I can barely even handle a regular size football. I got these tiny hands.
You can't handle the balls, can you?
I just can't handle the balls, man. Didn't think we were going to talk about this tonight, but Chump's like got huge hands. I've got small hands.
They're huge. They're huge.
Mine are so small. They're tiny. But yeah, I don't know. I felt like both teams had a relatively mediocre offensive night, and their defenses did what their defenses always do. Their defenses have been decent all year, and at times Notre Dame's defense has been near elite. But I don't feel like they were elite this past game. Again, it just feels like they're starting to run out of steam. Which again, props to Marcus Freeman for not blaming injury.
Yeah,
but
he
injury
has
does
every
take a
right
toll.
to. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure Notre Dame, like I was kind of going through that today. Notre Dame, I think, has lost a cornerback this year. They've lost a second string running back. I think it's a running back, maybe third. But their offensive line, like I was looking through and I was like, oh, their offensive line, they're worse off than Ohio State is. Like Ohio State lose
saying a lot.
Americans.
That is saying a lot.
And that's saying a lot. And it's saying a lot for both teams to have made it this far with these kind of worked up offensive lines. Because Notre Dame, I think, it was like a right tackle, a right guard, a center, and then they've gone through, I think, 2 left guards because their number 2 got hurt in this past game. So it's rough for them, and I do like it does make me kind of wonder when it comes to depth, when it comes to these guys getting back out there. I'm pretty sure even Love is kind of limping in to these games. And Love had a great game this past weekend. I think he's the one player, as well as Penn State's defensive end, I can't remember his name right off the top of my head, that were just like, okay, those 2 guys were studs. They were studs.
Yeah.
But we're going to see, and it's going to be a really difficult game for Notre Dame just because of those injuries, just because their depth is not on the same level as Ohio State is. And I think this is really where, the Judkins pickup in the offseason, I think this is where it's really going to show when you have 2 guys who are both in that 900 to 1,000 yard range, both come in, and you're getting running back 1 all game long. There's never a time when you're not. Whereas Love, I know their backup running back's pretty good, but Love is kind of the only guy you really have to kind of keep.
Yeah. He's really the only other runner aside from Riley Leonard that you have to really be concerned about on their team. So the thing that I'll say, here's what I'll say about Ohio State's offensive line is ever since the playoffs and while you guys were dealing with a depleted offensive line, whatever adjustments you guys made, whatever Ohio State's adjustments they made before the first playoff game seems to have really worked for them.
Yeah.
I arguably the offensive line for Ohio State looks better than it's looked all year.
Yeah. I don't think anybody argues with that.
And that's what's crazy. It's like there's less depth now, but it's for some reason, I guess they just moved assignments to such a degree that people are like, oh, actually this works better for me. I shouldn't have been playing left tackle. I should have been playing right tackle this entire time.
Which goes back to, all right, coach, what the heck is going on?
Sure.
If all of these guys switch positions and all of a sudden they're in the right, but no, they've been playing great, and so I'll take it.
Yeah, which leads us into the other semifinal game, which was a much better game than Penn State.
All right. let's talk Ohio State, Texas. All right.
So I want to talk. I want to do.
That's the nice thing. I will say this is the nice thing about college football is I keep getting older, and they just stay the same age.
Well. You do see like 28-year-olds playing college football now.
Well, that's true.
Hey, Cam Rising did just announce, right, Dennis? He just announced that he's not going to be returning.
No, I think Utah told them, hey, don't come back.
Right.
Yeah, probably.
I'm going to see how many Matthew McConaughey quotes I can get in.
Fair enough. But I want to do the opposite of what Josh Pate does, where he wants to talk about the victor first, just because we're going to be talking about the victor a lot tonight. but I think the things that I'll give props to Texas for, they seem to really limit or almost near eliminate the explosiveness.
Mm-hmm.
So it really made Ohio State become a dink and dunk offense, which they can do, but they had to adjust. They had to make adjustments and stuff like that. I personally don't buy I was hearing some things from some rumblings from, and you guys might be able to correct me on this, but I was hearing some rumblings about just like, they didn't just scheme it up correctly for Smith to get the ball. I'm like, no, I feel like Texas intentionally guarded him well. No, you got to give some props to the opposing team. Like if you're not able to get it to your big playmaker at all during the game, that's not you running the wrong schemes. That's you, that's the other team scheming properly against you. But the thing is, again, like I think the standout thing that Ohio State was able to do was their defense was already elite, but their defense was able to just to turn it up just an additional notch and put so much pressure on Ewers that he just looked uncomfortable all night long. So, I don't know what y'all's take was on the game.
So for Texas, I will say like it was a totally different dynamic. As an Ohio State fan, I'm really glad that we had this game. Because you go through 2 games where your offense just kind of explodes on the scene, and your defense, essentially from the beginning of the game, from second quarter on, defense is just like, hey, pin your ears back and go get the quarterback. That's all. Like that's all they were having to do. And so I like this game just in terms of moving forward. We've now seen them be able to play a game where they do have to kind of change things up. There is a little bit more. They have to kind of overcome some obstacles. Texas did a good job. I think, there's a whole back and forth on Twitter about, talking about Texas's cornerbacks were not as good as Notre Dame's, and they held Jeremiah Smith to one catch, 3 yards, I think it was. And, my question just is like, well, what about the other receivers? How did they do? They did pretty good. And so that's the thing is like, Jeremiah Smith doesn't make a few catches. Everybody else does. Texas played a great game. And one of the things that I personally want to say is that goal line stand, the kind of turning point of the game. There's a lot of people who are giving Sark a whole lot of crap for his play call. I totally disagree with giving him crap for that, because 2 times in a row, he tried the run it up the gut, and 2 times in a row he got stuffed or lost a yard. And then in that toss play, essentially they pulled I think it was a receiver over. The cornerback came all the way over, and instead of it being a zone or Caleb Downs coming over to play it, cornerback comes completely over. Caleb Downs is still allowed to do his little spy kind of make the play. And they run this toss where, it's that one little play. It's that cornerback doesn't come over, and they stay in more of a zone read. Caleb Downs is picked up. That play might work. It just happened to be this, I think it was a great call. I think Ohio State and Caleb Downs especially just kind of played it correctly. I think that Ewers did look rattled. I think that this is going to be one of those games that hurts his draft stock. Because this was a game like get some pressure on him, and he's not going to be able to do much. He had a couple great throws, but I mean, honestly, the throws to what was the running back's name? Blue. Out of the backfield. Most of those were pretty easy. Like the one touchdown, he was wide open. The other one, he was against Styles, a linebacker. But Texas played a great game. They really did. And I think that there were just a couple plays here or there that, a player doesn't make a play or something happens and it could go a totally different way. So I think they played great. I love Sark as a head coach. I think even Ryan Day has said that he's kind of modeled some stuff after Sark and watched him and his play calling. Great team, did a great job.
Well, in Ohio or Texas doesn't have to wait long to get potentially some revenge.
Right.
So, it won't have the same weight, but it'll at least feel good to start the season off if they were to win. But that's NIF.
That's still an if. And I mean, like we talked about it a little bit, Ohio State has beaten Texas and they've beaten UT. So I think that Ohio State gets to hold on to the UT moniker, and you got to beat us to get that UT back.
Yeah, you guys are the arbiters of the UT, the real UT, and whoever beats Ohio State, which
the ironic part of that though is like Michigan beat Ohio State and Texas beat Michigan.
Yeah, it's not the same. We're not doing.
This isn't a transitive property.
We're not dealing with transitive property. Right. We're just talking about the arbiter of the real UT. It doesn't Ohio State can't be the real UT because that makes no sense. But they can at least be the ones that are like, you know what? If you want to be considered the real UT, got to beat us.
We shall bestow the proper team with the title of UT.
Which the thing that's silly about that is Tennessee rarely ever plays Ohio State. So I think we've played you twice in the entirety of the program. So
1-1, right?
Huh? 1-1. 1-1. But and they both were important games. They both were bowl games technically. So
and we'll see you next time when I'm 68.
Probably. Yeah. And it'll be an interesting game. Who knows? We'll probably have no contact. It'll be flag football by then. Sure. So Dennis, what were your thoughts on the Ohio State Texas game?
I mean, I think Luke kind of said a good point of it. I think it was actually a good game for Ohio State to have, just because of the fact that, again, the points that both of y'all made, the first two playoff games, Ohio State just kind of run through them. Didn't really get to test the team. Like that, Luke left because he probably didn't want to hear it. No, but I gave Ohio State a lot of credit because where it would have been where they're just so used to giving one person the ball or just playing one side of football, now their whole team got tested. So when it comes to playing basically in the national championship now, if they need other people in the team to step up, they're not just stepping up from okay, we've been cold for about a month. We've actually been playing as recently as last week. It's not like, oh, hey, I just been in the game and just kind of running through the motion. Sure. So the fact that for one, Ohio State's, I was actually impressed with the O-line, just kind of be able to kind of keep just kind of Howard up and the entire team honestly up. Howard, honestly, I feel like he was playing good and then a little shaky at times too. But it was a game that they needed. It was a game that they really got tested and be like, hey, this is the type of game that they could be playing in the Natty as well. So, and I honestly think it was like 2 plays away from Texas probably taking the championship.
Yeah.
Yep.
The people I've seen saying, "Oh, Ohio State won that convincingly," I'm like, no. Like, I don't know what game you're watching. If you just watched the last couple minutes, I'm like, but no, like by no means.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
I was like the last 3 plays. Yes, Ohio State won convincingly.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to separate about 3 plays, then of course.
Right.
But if you're watching the entire game, it's just like it really could have gone either way. Ohio State just stepped up when they needed to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean they were. It was not a convincing victory, and that's one of those things. Like, yes, it was 2 touchdowns, but it was a 1 touchdown game on the doorstep, and a defensive end makes a once in a year type of play to put you up by 2 touchdowns. And now you're forced to go out there and really push the ball and really kind of force some things. And then, a Caleb Downs reads a play perfectly, makes an interception, seals the game. Like, this is not, there's by no means was this a blowout. This was nothing of the sort. So
yeah, the score is not indicative of what actually what happened in the game. So one of the other things that we kept on hearing before the game, and sometimes during the game, I had some people in a different chat saying this, but they were saying, "Well, guys, we're watching the actual national championship. Next week is really not going to be that. It's not going to be that impressive or whatever." What are y'all's thoughts? We're going to just go ahead and dive right on in to the Natty. Do you guys think that we just watched the national championship from a standpoint of like the real game of the year, the real like the best playoff game? Or do you think that we're actually going to potentially see a even better game in the one we're about to see?
Luke, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll go first.
I can see you already kind of like you're edging right there. I'm like,
no, I'm really kind of thinking about it. Well, I mean, and that's the hard thing, and that's why I do enjoy the playoffs the way that they are. Right. I'm seeing a lot of things on Twitter and all these places that are saying, last year, neither of these national championship teams are in because it's 4 teams. Notre Dame loses to NIU, Ohio State loses, to Oregon, and then Michigan. Neither of them are in. Neither of them are competing. Like, this is a moot point. And I think this is why I really enjoy this type of playoff scenario, because you have a Notre Dame team who, again, we've talked depth, and they're not as deep as some other teams that are out there, but they've got just as much, if not more, fight than a lot of these teams. And they've battled through things. And yes, they lost to NIU, which is that's a very devastating loss. But then they've battled the entire season to get to where they are. Ohio State, same type of thing. They lose to their rival for multiple years in a row. And, it's kind of like this was this like turning point of like, okay, all these, guys who've been here for 4 years and came back, with the 3 goals of, beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, and win a national championship. Well, they didn't get 2. Now they're shooting for 3. Yep. So I think that there's this like, they're great stories, right? And I think that's the cool thing about college football is that there is stories, there are narratives, there are, people were saying the Oregon-Ohio State game was, oh, this is the national championship. And then Ohio State blew them out. Now, then they said it about Texas, and, we had a good game. Notre Dame is a good team. Notre Dame has good players. I think they're a little more beat up than Ohio State. I think from a depth and a talent standpoint, Ohio State has them beat in those categories as well. Sure. However, there's a reason why they say things like any given Sunday. There's a reason that Michigan beat Ohio State this year when they were 21-point dogs. Like, things happen on the football field. Momentum shifts at the right time. A ball bounces. We saw that with Texas. We saw that in this past game where the guy returning the kickoff, ball comes out, goes right back to him. Jack Sawyer, strip sack, ball comes right back to him. Those type of things can happen and can really turn the tides. So do I think that, the Ohio State Texas game was the national championship game? I personally have said that I think that whoever comes out of this side is going to be the victor. But I don't think that means that it's going to be some kind of blowout or, that Notre Dame, it's like, hey, just save the money. Don't come. Yeah. I think it's going to be a good game.
Well, so correct me if I'm wrong, but a good chunk of Notre Dame's team played in the game last year, correct?
Correct.
So they've got a chip on their shoulder they have a legitimate reason to come into this game angry. And that's the thing that I think is going to help. If I'm looking at the game from a standpoint of momentum, the momentum that Ohio State has is that they've been on an upwards trajectory. They've been basically just claiming the elite title that we've been missing all season,
right?
For a team, but Notre Dame's like their momentum is the fact that they are on a revenge story.
Yeah,
they want revenge for last year. They want to. They got embarrassed at their home by the same team, so they're gonna want some revenge in Atlanta. Yeah. And so I can see how that even being more banged up and stuff like that, I can see how that could potentially carry them quite a bit.
Sure.
But I think that they're more banged. I think they're more banged up than even Penn State was. They were able to eke out a win because they're arguably a better coach team. Not arguably, they are a better.
They're a better coach team.
Just across the board. Sorry, James Franklin, Mr. Excuses.
I'm not Mr. 1-19 versus top 5 teams.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure one of those was Ohio State, though. So.
Well, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see probably another repeat of last year. It's going to be an incredibly slow game. I think that at least if it stays slow, that bodes well in Notre Dame's favor. And I think that Notre Dame has the defense to slow down Ohio State. The problem is that Ohio State has a defense to basically shut down
Right.
Notre Dame, because Notre Dame just really, let's be real, they really only have one weapon, and that's Riley Leonard. If he gets pressured at all, I mean, I personally like Riley Leonard more than Will Howard because of I like his gumption a little bit more. But from a standpoint of like an actual playmaker, Will Howard's a better passer, and he sees the field a little bit better than Riley Leonard does. So I don't know. It's just one of those things. Like I still think Ohio State's going to win, but I think that the best opportunity that Notre Dame has is to really lean into that anger that they have.
Yeah.
So
I feel like for this game, honestly, it really depends how Notre Dame's going to show up. If they're going to try to throw as much as like they were trying to versus Penn State, it's Ohio State's game. They're going to run with it. Just because that's not Notre Dame. Notre Dame is pure defense and just controlling the ball, control turnovers. That being said, if Will Howard plays even remotely recklessly, Ohio State's screwed. Notre Dame is good at one thing. Typically, is basically not turning over the ball and creating turnovers.
Yeah.
With all that, I mean, it's going to be an interesting game. I don't think the championship was necessarily played. If people are going to play like, oh, it came down to the last play, the last 2 minutes. If you're just doing it off that, I feel like you're being a bit biased, honestly, because to say that it's going to go down to the last 2 minutes, I don't think it will. I generally don't think it will go to even to the last 4 minutes, maybe some garbage time, scoring, but I don't think it'll make it any less of a game to kind of go with. But I definitely think it'll be interesting in its very own way. I don't think it's going to be a blowout though either.
Sure. Yeah, I mean the difference between this game and like when we're talking about is like have we already seen the national championship being played? Like last year, you could make a pretty good case that a better national championship game would have been Michigan versus Alabama or even Texas versus Washington, because Michigan versus Washington was boring, like so boring. Michigan would have that game in the bag from the first quarter on.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing as like in the 2022 season for the most part. So in the 2022 season, Ohio State versus Georgia, easily one of the best, like a top 2 best games of that entire season.
Right.
Easy. And I would say like in the top 5, you've got Texas or TCU and Michigan was also a great game, but the national championship was incredibly boring because that was a blowout. So like, I think that this, because of the revenge factor, plus the fact that Ohio State is just a different team than they were at the beginning of or throughout basically the entire season. I feel like, and arguably Notre Dame is different. Notre Dame's not the same as they were when they played at IU. They look way different. I still won't claim them as elite. Maybe their defensive secondary at this point, I would say, is pretty elite, but
their safety tandem is.
Yeah. But here's my thing. They really have only played like one team that's like really pass proficient. Aside from, again, I get Georgia's technically pass proficient, but Georgia also had their second string quarterback in. So let's calm down there. But USC was really the only other team they played all year that was pass proficient.
Yeah, and I think one of the things in terms of the revenge kind of aspect of it is a lot of the guys on Notre Dame were there. Minus Riley Leonard, he was not. But the same goes for Ohio State.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the guys from Ohio State were there as well. And so it's kind of this, Trey Henderson went for that like 70-yard run in that game. So it's kind of this, Notre Dame, I'm seeing a lot of the, hey, we've gotten better since last year. And it's like,
that's true.
We have too. Like it kind of goes both ways. Like I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
But we did too. Like so it's I've seen a lot of that from Notre Dame people saying, "Oh, we're better. We've gotten better since we're a totally different team. We're all this." And I'm like, yes, we are too. So we'll see.
I just expect this game to be played with a lot of emotion, which is going to be a lot of fun to watch, which lends to the concept of it actually
Sure.
be feeling like a national championship.
Except for Marcus Freeman, he's not going to be very emotional because he never is.
Unless he does something, unless his team does something that allows him to dance on the sideline.
Sure. I just go back to that James Franklin, Marcus Freeman thing where James Franklin seemed like he was trying to get under his skin, and he's just like, you see Marcus Freeman just like, really, like we're doing this. Like,
Is Ohio State, if Notre Dame is to win,
mhm.
is Ohio State just gonna like disown Marcus Freeman?
Well, I mean, I'll say this. I'll say this. We loved Quinn Ewers until we played him.
Gotcha.
We've all loved Marcus Freeman. Like, Marcus Freeman's one of my favorite guys. I really loved him. And I even was happy when he got the head coaching job at Notre Dame. But he's made some comments while the coach at Notre Dame, kind of disparaging his time, like, hey, if I was to go back and do it all again, I would have, I made the wrong decision, talking about the academics and, hey, at Notre Dame, we actually have to go to class and things like that. So he's made some comments that have kind of put him on the downward trend for a lot of fans. I personally see that as like, what are you going to say as a coach? Like, if you're being asked, hey, tell us about this. Obviously, he loves the time that he had at Ohio State. He went there. He stayed there. He claims it. But he's now the coach of Notre Dame. So if he's going to get kids to come to his school, come play with him, he's kind of got to do that kind of stuff and get him there. I'm not going to disown him. I think he's a good dude. Like, his story, I can't remember. I want to say his mother's from like Korea, if I remember correctly. And like, she just worked really hard. And like, he speaks so glowingly of her and like how they were like best friends and all this kind of stuff. And like, he's one of those guys that it's like, even if I hate him, I don't really hate him.
Sure.
Like, I'm going to hate you this game because I have to, but I really do like you.
Like mom hates him.
Yeah. Not like Riley Leonard.
You're actually kind of good, but you suck.
You suck. So no, I don't think Ohio State, we're not going to disown him.
That's fair.
Now, Ryan Day, I don't know.
He loses.
He loses. He's out. Get him out of here.
Y'all turn on him real fast.
Oh, yeah. We're like, just stay at Notre Dame. They could use an assistant.
We'll go back to Urban Meyer.
Even though I've seen rumors of him interviewing for the Cowboys opening.
Oh, let's jump into that real quick before we sign off. There's the Cowboys opening has introduced a lot of interesting rumblings in the college football world. So you've heard about Ryan Day potentially doing some interviews there, which, I mean, if he's been like, if he may be having kind of like what Calipari had at Kentucky last year, their basketball coach, when he just decided to leave and go to Arkansas because he was just tired of the fan base. Yeah. So Ryan Day could just be tired of the fan base, which, I mean,
but you're going to Dallas.
Your
fan base isn't that much better.
No, it's terrible. I think you're going to a job that you're basically going to get fired at in 2 years. I don't know why you would do that. But the other ones, have you guys heard some of the other rumblings? So
I've heard Deion Sanders to Vegas.
Yep. Now,
Bears.
That's true.
Did you say Freeman to the Bears?
I think it's what he said. Yeah.
Yeah.
Freeman to the Bears.
But Bears is another.
Interesting.
Deion did say that he wasn't as interested in the Cowboys. He's like, he was willing to talk to him, but he did say, he's like, I actually like what we're building in Boulder. So it'll be interesting to see. I think he's already said if he's going to coach in the NFL, it's only because he's going to coach his sons. Right. So we'll hold him to that word as of right now. I also think he turns on his word a lot, unfortunately, just because he's a business guy and that's just what he does. And I will say, this is a really weird time that we're living in because you have to talk as if you're never going to leave, but kind of in the background do what's best for you or kind of what you want to do. So it's like you can't shoot yourself in the foot here. So you have to say those things. Sure. But it definitely does kind of lend itself to making you look a little flip-floppy. Well, have you heard the other person that's been supposedly talking with the Dallas Cowboys? Belichick.
Really?
And so, yeah, so it's interesting. He's actually got a very favorable contract with North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
So, right, he's also been very slow to hire supporting coaching staff, like really slow. He only has 7 coaches hired so far, which is not great.
No.
But before June of this year, if he wants to leave, it's a $10 million buyout, which is really low.
Mm-hmm.
After June, I don't know how he was able to finagle this, but after June, he gets a $1 million buyout.
Yeah.
Like we're talking a guy that's easily like going to probably do some kind of shoestringing along. Just, oh yeah, I'm totally here. And then June 1st hits, he's just like, I'm going back to the NFL, baby.
My question with that, I don't think it's gonna be Dallas Cowboys because
No.
Jerry Jones is way too controlling.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's because of the fact that spring semester ends and his girlfriend could break up with him after that.
Yeah. Dude, you beat me to it. I was about to say the only benefit is that his girlfriend gets a free ride to North Carolina.
Like that's it. Like, you got into your master's program there. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
He could just pay her way. That's not really that big of a deal. He's worth
Let us have the joke, Michael. Let us have
There is one thing though I do want to say because Michael just doesn't want to give credit to this part. Indiana has only lost to 2 teams.
Mm-hmm.
And they're both in the Natty. No one else can say that. So is Indiana a real team?
Indiana also only played 2 teams that were worth anything this year, and they're in the Natty.
I mean,
and they got destroyed both times by those teams.
I want to say destroyed both times.
Oh, they did. You know Notre Dame game, they were not in control at any point in that game. Mm-hmm. Notre Dame just doesn't have a scoring offense, so they just don't take it. They take a long time to get down the field.
Mm-hmm.
But Ohio State beat them by almost 30 points.
It was something like that. Was it
38 to 10 or something?
Yeah, something like that. Maybe it was 10, but it was a lot. I will say, I don't believe that they are on the level of either of those teams.
No, they're not. By no means. I'm not saying that they are.
However, what they did this year is going to bode very, very well for them in the coming, the coming years. I think they're going to see some, I think you're going to see some portal gets from them. I think you're going to start seeing, especially some Indiana kid. Like, let's be real, like the Indiana going between Indiana and Notre Dame, like that's going to be like they might pull a couple more kids, away from Notre Dame in some of those scenarios, just because of the, you don't have to be Catholic, you don't have to go to mass before every game, whatever it may be. Because Marcus Freeman brought that back. Brian Kelly got rid of the going to mass, and Freeman came into. But I think that you're going to see what they did this year really kind of propel them, and where they might not become like an elite, Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama type team. They're going to start kind of.
They might be Alabama now.
Well, yeah, current Alabama. I'm meaning Saban, Alabama. We got to differentiate there. But
Dynasty.
They're going to start creeping. They're going to start creeping into that like kind of top of the mid.
They got another good transfer quarterback. So got a quarterback from Cal.
Yep.
So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do. Again, I haven't looked at their schedule for next year. I don't know if it's as cupcakey as it was this year. But I've got a feeling it wasn't. So, or isn't. So, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they look like at the end of next year. And whether or not they make it back into the playoffs again. I mean,
we'll see. I mean, it's going to be interesting because I think the Big Ten's there are some teams in the Big Ten that are going to get better than they did this year. I think there's some teams in the SEC who you can't expect them to be down, looking at kind of Georgia and Alabama. Like, I don't think they're going to stay down. Alabama might. I don't know.
Alabama's already taken some hits. They've already lost some commitments for the 2025 year.
And they lost the running back. Their running back went to Michigan. Like, my goodness. Now, I'm really confused, though, because Michigan fans, keep saying that they're developed, not bought. And all of a sudden, here they are buying all these players, talking about how they're number one in the portal right now. But, Those off-season banners, man.
I do got
Dang.
one question though. Do you guys think that Beck is going to be better at Miami than Ward was, or at least make the team better? Not individual performance,
No,
but make the team any better.
no. We can talk about, and we're, huh?
As competitive?
No, I think Ward was a better quarterback.
Yeah.
No, that's saying not individual performance, but just general team is what I'm
I
saying.
get it. I think that Ward is a better quarterback, and he makes people around him better. Beck is not a better quarterback. He doesn't make people around him better.
That's
Gunnar Stockton makes people better. You saw that his receivers looked better when he played versus when Beck played. So I think Beck is just riding out the college thing because I think he knows that the pros is not going to be where he's going to be successful. Like you see such a drop off when Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers leave. And I mean, his stats looked like garbage this year in comparison to when he had two elite receivers on his team the previous year. And so you really see what that does. And granted, Miami has better receivers than Georgia does next year, but I just don't. You can't persuade me that Bobo is that much worse of a schemer than Cristobal is from a offensive perspective. So
I think it goes if you're asking me, Cam Ward or like who's the better, who's going to make the team better. Cam Ward is going to be my everyday and in between those, just because I think that he's more dynamic. So he was getting yards with his feet. He was, I think, has a better arm. I think he's got a bigger arm than Beck does. And I just think that the way that he leads the team lends to them being better. He brought his team up. He kind of, elevated the guys on his team. Whereas Beck, I don't think he ever elevated players. I think they had to elevate him. A quarterback should be a leader and should be the guy that's like, hey, this is what we're doing. Get behind me. Like, let's go.
So would Beck get more help from the refs than Ward did?
I don't know.
Even.
It's still the ACC. The ACC refs are kind of notorious for, or at least this year, they were notorious for helping specific teams out in the ACC. So that might continue next year. Who knows?
I don't know. Cristobal probably has him on the payroll.
That's possible. Considering how much money Miami's invested in everything. But if you want to hear more of these types of conversations, we're going to talk about them after the national championship next week. We're going to talk about next week after we do a recap of the national championship, which we all think. I think Ohio State's going to win. Is that what we're all kind of guessing? But we're going to talk about which teams we're looking out for in 2025. Other programs on the rise, things like that. And then, we'll look at just the kind of the news for transfer portal, because we'll see some of like the final winter transfer portal stuff and next week and stuff like that, and just kind of see everything get wrapped up. So, but if you're interested in that, you should come back next week, grab a drink, and join the conversation.